fascinating one for you guys today. Kyle Malott will be talking about how we see the stars as Potawatomi. Quickly, before we get going on it, I do want to mention that going along with this presentation, next Saturday, the 24th, we will also be doing a trip to a local planetarium to watch a video on Potawatomi Star Now. So if anybody's interested in that, it is free to go to it, and we will provide transportation. With that, Kalamazoo Valley Museum. So they have a planetarium there. The show is about 20 to 25 minutes long, and then there'll be time to check out the museum afterwards, and then we'll head back here around 2:45 or so.
Okay, do we have to take the bus?
Nope, you can arrive there. There is a parking, I believe, street side, but it's a little limited and it's in Kalamazoo, so it might be taken up, but there is a parking garage right next door to it. So.
Well, can I reserve a spot now?
Yes, absolutely. We get up to like 45 people, so plenty of space for anybody that wants to come with.
And
Would it be possible to leave a little bit early? And so I could stop at a hardware store on the way there?
I do a man thing, yeah.
Yeah, you may have to carpool for that one. But that being said, if we have questions about that, feel free to reach out to me at cecil.wilson at pokagonband-nsn.gov. And I'll let Kyle introduce himself and we can get this presentation started.
Bmejwen Dodem, Kyle Malott. I think we Ezhe Nabmaygo. Ezhe Nabmaygo. Market and Upjojen Kaza or Duckwayo means Serena Malott, Nish Dance Nanak Gdathmowmenan, Nengosek Ezhe Nabmaygo, which goes not to be Pokagon Mina Wemkomikwe, and we don't can mark or Bmejwen one. Yalpon and Gid Ninji, we just not have to give you Anjin and we web no mage house. You can no magonada, Bmejwen, Wapmigo, Makwe bin Nishibasake, Nishnaba. So I just said hello. My name is Bmejwen. My English name is Kyle Malott. I'm from the Eagle Clan. I'm from the Pokagon band. I'm from Powhatan, which is Niles. And I live there today. I work for Ezhe Nabmaygo, which is our language department. My wife's name is Serena Malott. She's not here. We have two daughters, Nanakiba and Matea. Carla Collins and I were sent to Wisconsin, Forest County Reservation to learn Potawatomi language. We were there for 4 years, and we were taught under Jim Thunder, since passed, Mary Jane Thunder, Lillian Rice, who has since passed. We also learned a lot from Mike Zimmerman Jr. And that's where a lot of the star knowledge comes from as well, too. So I'd like to acknowledge where this information came from. So with that, we're going to get started. We put Nengosek Ezhe Nabmaygo. So I said I'm going to talk a little bit about stars and how we see them as Potawatomi. So if there's two words that we learned today, you guys remember Nengos? So let's everybody say Nengos.
Nengos.
And Nengosek.
Nengosek.
Nengos.
Nengos.
Star. Nengosek. Star. So it's important to remember that in Potawatomi, when we pluralize something that's animate, these are living beings. When we pluralize it, it ends with a K. It does not end with an S like it does in English. If you end something with an S, say Nengosas, you're saying a little star. So like Potawatomi comes to the word Bmejwen. You say Bmejwen, that's Potawatomi people. But if you say Bmejwen, means a small Potawatomi person. So, and then you guys online too, if anybody's got any questions as we're going along, just blurt them out. Same with everybody here. I'm pretty laid back with stuff, so I'm not a formal person at all. So, so with that, we are going to talk about this star map here. I revitalized this, I don't know, last fall. So the first incarnation of this map I made back in like 2017, and I've made like 4 since then. I've updated the artwork and a lot of different things. I've added more things to make it more readable, so you can see in different areas. So The way that this works,
Excuse me.
Yep.
Question.
Yep.
Which version then was on
Res Dogs.
Res Dogs?
So
Your first version, your second
that was
version?
my second version.
Ah,
I don't know how they got it, probably off of Facebook, I'm guessing.
Cool to see it. It was
Yeah.
really cool to see it. I'm like, wow.
Season 2, season 3, episode 4 or something like that. You see Graham Greene walk into a
Yeah.
greenhouse and it's painted on the wall there. I was like, what?
Now, do you have it copyrighted?
I have not copyrighted. I don't know how to do it.
You can make some money on it.
So the way that we read this map here, I set it up to where you have the yellow up here. That is springtime. And there's a line that coincides with the spring equinox all the way down to the fall equinox. And so you see all the yellow there are things that you see during the spring. You see these faint lines on here in between all the way around. There's 13 moons in a year. And that dictates when each moon starts and what you see during these moons. So you're able to read it. If you look at inside the yellow, there's different artwork all the way around. All the way around, yellow, red, black, and white. And so that depicts each moon and what it's called. So if you notice here, there's some sandhill cranes. That's Jijak Jesus, that's March. And so that month starts, that month starts at that faint line next to Bmejwen. So we say Bmejwen.
No, come on now.
Bmejwen is springtime. That you see during this time. And then we're gonna break this down. I have it split up in each one of them. So that's a little bit of how that works. With that, we'll go to the next one. Amnokmuk. Can we all say Amnokmuk?
no.
So these are the things you're gonna see during Bmejwen. We're gonna break those down one by one. So here's a zoomed in spot. You see the cranes here. You see the leaves here, but for Pokagon Jesus, Bmejwen Jesus, and Pokagon Jesus starts about right in there. So first two we're going to talk about Mong Nengos first. Well, I'll say Mong Nengos. Mong is the loon. Mong is one of the chieftain clans. If you look at the loon, there are white spots all over his back. What I've been told is those spots represent stars. So he's connected with the stars. This is also, but in English you would call the Little Dipper. Mong Nengos. At the very point of his back here is the Northern Star. And you will see Mong Nengos in the sky all throughout the year. We'll talk about that in a minute too. There's some that you see all year long. Everything revolves around like this. Some of them you'll only see during certain times. Some of them you'll see all year long. This is one of them. Next to him, you see Wajik. Not Wajit, that's something else. So Wajik is a fisher. Does anybody know what a fisher is?
Like,
Cat.
Yep, it's a cat. This is Wajik.
Oh,
Wajik. This came from the UP. So you'll notice in his tail here, there's an arrow, and there's a story behind that, which we'll get to later on. And it's depicted in the stars. A lot of these things are depicted in the stars, our stories, all these different things. We come from the sky. When we leave, we go back to the sky. So our people are always looking at what the sky is telling us, and it's telling us what we're supposed to do during certain times of the year, which we'll get into all that. Wajik is an interesting animal. It's one of the only animals that can take down a porcupine by itself.
that sounds painful.
Yep. So they're pretty cool. Any
How-
questions on?
How do they fight off the quills?
Oh, wow. Yep. Yeah, so as you can see, Wajik, it's not that big.
No.
About the size of a house cat, but shorter. But they are very vicious. You can look up videos of them on YouTube, ripping up squirrels and stuff like that.
it looks like they're long, like an otter.
Yeah, they're from the weasel family, so they're similar. They got some sharp claws here. Pretty cool. So, and we'll get to that story here.
Name, did they name people after the weasel or weasel after?
I know a few people I can name after a weasel.
Oh, also, I forgot to mention, Nengosek is the Big Dipper. And it's not the way that you see it depicted with English and Greeks and stuff like that. Theirs cuts off right here in the middle. Ours extends, and you see a star on his shoulder, his face, his leg there, and his foot down there. So the way that we see the stars is different. We're on a different side of the world, so we see different things. Also, too, some of these things that we're going to see on here may not appear in the sky the same as is depicted here, and that's because of something that's called a supernova. Stars go through a phase where they supernova and they're no longer visible to us. So some of these stars may not be visible anymore from us here. And these are the star constellations that I've been told about. I'm sure that there are more. Also, too, I encourage everybody to pass these stories along to your family, because these are something that have been dying off. It's recently started to be revived. Also, too, talk to elders about these things. They might know some things from back when they were kids that they didn't realize they knew. So I drew this map and I showed it to Jim, and he's like, I remember that. I remember hearing about this when I was a kid. And so it brings those stories back out. So that's something that needs to be done. So as we see, I talked about everything moves around in the sky. Everything that we see revolves around that northern star. That's how that map turns. So as it is spring, Bmejwen, you see that the fisher cat, the way that we see him, he is upside down. The loon is kind of on his back. When we get into Neben, which is summer, so Bmejwen, go over that. Bmejwen is springtime, but it literally means a good body of water. And it's talking about the rain that comes down, makes everything grow. Neben is summer. It literally means plentiful. So that good body water comes down and makes everything plentiful. Get into the Gdathmowmenan, that ga has to do with growth. Dugwa or tukwa has to do with cut short. Growth has been cut short. So good body water comes down, makes everything even, and then it is cut short. Then you get into Bmejwen, which means everything stops. So our powwow, Kibunminka, and also here Gibonhinka, that bone has to do with stoppage. So Bmejwen, everything is stopped. So a lot of our words and everything are telling different things. And once you start learning the language and stuff like that, you start to see a lot of things in a different way. So there's a lot of movement. So this is telling a whole cycle just in these 4 words. And so I like to point out this Bmejwen here, because you see the fisher is now facing upwards like that. And that's going to collide into the story that we're going to talk about later on. Why he has that arrow in his tail. Any questions on that? Also interesting too, back before World War II and everything like that, Potawatomis used the swastika symbol. And so if you're looking at the stars and stuff like that, this is what that's representing, is those 4 directions and how they turn throughout the year. So you see the line coming out
Is it
there.
where Potawatomi?
Yeah. What do you know? No, he's not. No, he's not. So that's what that's representing in our culture. We stopped using it.
Also went in a different direction than the Nazis once.
Yeah, ours went the other way.
Right.
Yep. So these ones that we got here, we
So
got,
I've heard that before with other nations.
yeah, yep. Basically, a lot of different cultures around the world use that. So it's interesting to see.
Yeah, there's a painting at From the, Wajak Stove Company, what was that stove company?
Round Oak.
Round Oak. Round Oak has a painting from,
Assuming language.
Oh, yeah.
Free.
Has it on it as well,
yeah,
from, I think, 1917 or something.
yeah. I think actually that's when the Round Oak. Is that, yeah, it's in the Dwajak Museum there, but there's a painting of, Dwajak, Canada hide, and there's that symbol on there.
Yep.
I think.
So here we see guy sitting there and he's exhausted. Call him Wanondishik. And in the Greek version, this is Hercules. So Wanondishik, the constellation to us, somebody who is exhausted. Why is he exhausted? Well, next to him, when we see Dodoswin, we say Dodoswin. Dodoswin is a sweat lodge. And what is being depicted here, and remember this is a spring constellation. What is being depicted here is this individual has been out on his fast, his 4-day fast. He has finished that fast and he's entered the sweat lodge and he's come out and he's so exhausted because he hasn't eaten, he hasn't drank anything for 4 days, and he's gone through this sweat. So he's just done. So he's just laying there outside of the sweat lodge because of everything that he's put his body through in order to connect to that spiritual side. This is telling us when we're supposed to fast, springtime. So when we see that constellation in the sky, now we know this is the time for that. So can we say Wanondishik? Dodoswin. So this Dodoswin is the corona borealis, not the coronavirus. Any questions on this one? And remember, you guys online, if you want to ask any questions, just blurt them out too.
I was in Bay Mills in June and event for work, and Cecil Pavlon was there. And he was building war clubs out of old furniture. He was taking the legs off furniture and carving them and turning them into war clubs. So, him and I've known each other for a really long time. And he put that, like swastika or whatever we're gonna call it, on his work. And I looked at him, I said, explain. And he's kind of a funny guy. And he explained it all to me then.
Yeah. So next we have Ninik Boznenbos. So you may hear Nanabojo, you may hear Wenabojo, you may hear Nanabuju, Nanabush, you may hear Wiskat. It's all the same individual. And that word, that name Nanabojo comes from Ninik Bozo. And Ninik Bozo means a quivering tail. That boz or bozo refers to a tail. It's the same boz as in babozo, rabbit. Ninik refers to a quivering motion. So the Nanabojo star, this one is Scorpius. And you'll see Nanabojo has an arrow and he's pointing at something, which we will talk about a little bit about later. So Nanabojo was one of the first individuals that was put down here. He was half human and half spirit. And he had a few different brothers. The first one was Jaquis, which means the oldest. You have Wobbles, who later became Gibiabos, which we'll talk about later. And then we have Nanabojo, and then there's a fourth one that we'll also talk about later. So these stories are all depicted up there as well, and we'll get into that. So now we have Anibuk, when it is summertime. Keep in mind too, a lot of these constellations have different variations, different families, different tribes, and stuff like that have been integrated into one. Think of Pokagon band, we're a mixture of a lot of different tribes. So that is seen throughout these as well too. So Anibuk means as in the summertime. Again, you see strawberries, raspberries, sun, fish. Those are depicting those months. Don't get scared about the giant skeleton. So this particular area right here is a whole cluster of different constellations. And there's 4 different variations of this one that's laying on top. The first is Jijak Nengos. Jijak Nengos. Jijak, can we all say Jijak? That is the sandhill crane. And this coincides to the time that they're doing their dancing and mating. This is the Cygnus or Summer Cross constellation. These 4 that we're talking about. The next version of this is Wabji Nengos. You see the swan there. Wabji. Now we have Pokagon Nengos. Giant skeleton flying. So Pokagon, has anybody ever heard of Pokagon?
Yeah. Where are you?
Heard it the last time you did this.
Yeah. So, if you guys are familiar with the term Pokagon for a chicken, it describes the way in which they flail their wings. Pokagon is referring to that same kind of motion in the sense of when people are doing bad, whether it be murdering or anything like that. Pokagon is an entity that come and rip their rib cage open, flail their rib cage open and take their heart. So, and he's also one that takes us to that Gdathmowmenan, that Milky Way after we pass on as well. So he's basically our version of the Grim Reaper. So be good.
Our version of the what?
Grim Reaper.
Grim Reaper.
Okay.
Not your friend.
Not your enemy either.
Yep.
These are stories that our children will sleep with.
Yeah.
And then next we have Bmejwen Nengos. We'll say Bmejwen.
Wet.
It's your thunder beam. You may hear Bmejwen, you may hear Nimki, you may hear Nabmaygo. There's other different words for some entity. So Bmejwen, this is the time in which Bmejwen are most active, summertime. They're making their presence known, going around and cleaning the earth up. They have responsibilities of keeping the earth clean. So you see these storms come in, that's them cleaning stuff up. Their responsibility is to clean the earth, whether it means taking us out or not. And you see a lot of things these days. All these storms are getting worse. You see these floods and these big storms and hurricanes and all these different things. That's the Bmejwen trying to correct what we've done to this planet. And it's going to get worse and worse and worse until we clean up. So that's important to remember as well. So we are the curators of this planet. We did take care of it. Underneath these guys, you see Stigwan, which is the bear. Stigwan. Ko is a black bear, Stigwan is its head. As you see, it's depicted right there. And in his mouth, you see Gigo, which is fish. Gigo Nengos. And so the bear head is the summer triangle, and Gigo Nengos is Delphinius, which is also a fish in Greek. And he's eating that fish, fattening up. He knows that in a few months, it's going to start getting colder, and he's going to be prepared for it. So can we all say Jijak Nengos?
Jijak Nengos.
Wabji Nengos?
Nengos.
Dak Nengos? Bmejwen Nengos?
Nengos.
Stigwan? Gigo Nengos? Questions on these ones?
Yeah, lots, but go ahead.
Next, we have Adguaguk, and it is fall time. And down here, see the tracks of elk, Bmejwen pieces. So what's interesting about these moons is they tell us a lot of history too. There's so many different versions of the months out there. One that I use is from Joseph Warsaw, who was schooled at Carey Mission, Niles. He later ended up down in Citizen, but that list of moons came from back when he was here. And that was documented in 1843 after he was already down there. But if you look over here, you would have seen Bmejwen Nengos, which is trout moon. And that's depicting when Topnabee's village was on Lake Michigan over in New Buffalo. Primary food source was Magazine, lake trout. Next month is Bmejwen Kyle. Now, these villages didn't stay in the same spot all year long. Spring, summer, fall, winter. This is when this village was moved from New Buffalo to Niles. And the name of that New Buffalo village was Dowajoyak. That's where that word comes from, the name of that village. The name of this Niles village was Swabda, which is 30 miles to Dowajoyak. And you see, Bmejwen Kyle, that was our primary food source at that time, was elk. So I always like to point that out because our language shows all of this history throughout it.
Where are they?
Elk, they've been killed off now.
We ate them all?
No, the
We
settlers. So there was,
Hit by semis.
What'd you say?
They got run over by semi
Oh,
truck.
I see.
Semis, yeah.
there was archaeological surveys done of Pokagon's village in the 80s, I believe it was. And the three primary food sources of Pokagon's village in Niles was number 1, elk, number 2, pig, and number 3, deer. And the pig came from Treaty Chicago 1821. Carry mission was started, and they were supposed to supply us livestock, and pig was part of that. Wasn't wild boars.
In exchange, they took the elk.
Yeah, pretty much.
But I understand it only takes 3 years for a pig to turn back into a wild boar.
Yeah.
Once they leave civilization.
Yep.
So,
So under the Gwagwit fall time, first we have Nengosek Ezhe Nabmaygo. And that is 3 brothers on a canoe, Cassiopeia. So you'll see up here, we have Gman, right above here. I think I actually took the picture of this and then made it. So Nengosek means 3 brothers, and the brothers, and Sogmowat, they are floating together as 3. Why are they doing that? There's a couple of different stories behind it. The first is they're hunting moose. Now, the moose is a land animal and an aquatic animal. It can swim. So back in the day, if you're hunting moose, you may be out on a canoe doing that. And that's that story being depicted there. And that moose star is Pegasus. So Hercules' horse. The other story behind it is Bmejwen the rising star. And this constellation comes out at the same time that it's time to start harvesting wild rice, Bmejwen. So these constellations, when we see them, they're telling us what we need to do next within the year cycle. So can we say Nengosek and Sogmowat?
And so good.
Say Bmejwen Nengos.
Nengos.
So Bmejwen is wild rice. Bmejwen is to do any part of the process of wild rice. Say Mose Nengos. They also hear Mozo. That is actually where the name Warsaw comes from. Any questions on these ones?
Cassiopeia, we can see that all year round. Is it when it's specifically like in the formation that it looks like a canoe?
Yeah,
That
so
we would know?
it's actually 3 stars.
Yeah.
And so if you look here, there's a star on this individual, this one, and this one.
So right in the middle.
Yeah, so it's up for interpretation of how you view it, but our people viewed it as the 3 individuals and they saw them on a canoe.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
If they had tied in with the moose and everything.
Yep.
Who laid on their back all this time and figured all this out?
Well, our people were astronomers. We were outside all the time. We didn't have distractions of phones and computers and all that stuff, so we were aware of everything that was going on. And remember, we came from the sky, we go back in the sky, so we're always looking back at creator observers.
And have light pollution, so you can actually see everything.
Right?
Growing up, I didn't know that much on my Oneida side, but I remember one thing, that, well, she was Mohawk. I'm trying to remember her name. She was from Six Nations, but she lived in Detroit for a long, long time. She was a friend of my mom's, and then she went back and, she knew the medicines real well. But the Sky Nation is very upset with its people because they're not following the stars like they used to. They knew when to plant, they knew when to harvest, they knew when to have certain ceremonies, all by watching the sky. And I think it's true with most of our native nations. I can't remember her name.
Yep, that's why it's important that we carry these on.
Yes, yes.
Any questions on these ones? So next, Bmejwen. It is winter time. There's a lot in the winter, and then for winter stories, that's when all these things are talking about. So that's what's happening right now. Snow is melting. As we get into winter, you see Kogises, or Kachumkogises, the big bare moon. Kogises, the bare moon. And what that's talking about is the big bare moon is describing the mothers being pregnant, getting ready to give birth to the cubs. And they're not actually asleep in those dens. I've been in there. They do bear tagging up on the Menominee res. And so I went up there a couple of times and they were like, hey, you want to stick your head in there? And I go in there and that bear is looking at me like, oh. But during this moon right here is when the babies are born. That's Kogies. So that's what that's talking about. And then we have Gongises, which around here would be February. You know, February we get the most snow here, so that still is true. So we have Mshika Nengos. This is Canuck. I will say Canuck. Canuck is a turtle shell. The word for a snapping turtle, you can say Mshika. You can also say Canuck. In Ojibwe, Mikanok, and that's where Mackinac comes from. So we have Mshika as a general term for a turtle, and it describes one that sinks to the earth. When they go in the water, they sink down. We say Mshika, Kinok, Kinok, and then there's another one, Boskado. Boskado is a box turtle. It's the one that boards the shell. Black shell, yellow, and orange on it. Then we also have Squawkass. Squawkass is your painted turtle. And then Tatabinok. Tatabinok is your soft shell turtle. So we have all kinds of different words for turtle. Most people just say Mshika because it's used for.
But you said connect was snapping turtle.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. But Mshika also too. And that constellation is Capella. And this dictates the time in which they go underground, hibernation. And it's pretty cool if you ever see them in the springtime when they come out of there and they have that land on them, that dirt and the grass and everything like that. And that goes right back to the flood story and how Turtle Island came to be. So those are pretty cool things to see. Below that, we have Bmejwen and Nengos. Now that term Bmejwen, today we use it for a cow. Before we used it for a bison. That means one that is low to the earth. It's talking about their belly. Actually, before we use this for a bison, we use this for a mammoth.
What?
Mammoth.
Oh, mammoth, mammoth, yeah.
We have terms for all those different ice age creatures that we interacted with here. It's pretty cool to look at. So, story for another day.
Yeah. Some of those are at the Niles Museum, right?
Yeah.
You have a little display there with those,
Yep.
like the giant beaver and everything.
Yeah, there was a giant beaver, there was a skull, wasn't it?
I think so.
Yeah, there's a giant beaver skull found in Niles along the river, and it's in the Fort St. Joseph Museum down there. I gave them the words, I don't know if it's up yet.
How do we have time to do all this stuff? We only got here like 13 years before Christopher Columbus.
We were fast learners.
So can we say Wajukan Nengos? There's another term for a bison, and that's washks. What? Washki. Washki is a wood bison, and that is the type of bison that would be in our area here as opposed to what's out west.
We killed those all off too.
And so also.
Good week would be eaten if we didn't do that.
If you go to Madeline Bertrand Park, the French word for that area is parc à vache, which means cow pasture, and it's referring to the bison. There's another French word for that park called Parc du Pisse, and it's describing where they piss. So if you're walking around that park and you step in a puddle, you may have stepped in a bison pee.
When she was talking about the wood bison as opposed to the prairie bison, one was larger than the other.
Yeah.
And the wood bison were larger than the prairie?
I see.
I don't know. That's what I'm asking you.
One's slightly larger, but the way that I know them is the hump on their back. So the wood bison has a hump that comes up right behind the neck and curves down to the back part. The plains bison is more flat across the top.
Yeah, not as pronounced.
Yeah.
I mean, they still have the hump, obviously, but
Right.
not as pronounced. Okay.
Yeah, so this is, you see here, the hump is on this one. So this is the washki. And then we also have muck nimbos. This is muck. Beaver. Muck. So I like to bring some of these things out to talk about them too, because they want to be talked about too. So can we say muck nimbos? And that is the Gemini constellation. That we also have over to the side here, you see some yellow stars and a little patch here. There's two interpretations of that. One is Dodo Sinik, which are sweat rocks. This is the Pleiades constellation. Dodo Sinik. So this goes back in with the other story of sweat lodge. We also have Bmejwen Kyle Malott, hole in the sky. Now, in our stories, this is the hole in the sky that we were set down from. Bmejwen Kyle Malott. So there's different stories of our creation. And I attribute to that to the different tribes that are intermarried here. So there's one of us coming out of the St. Joe River. That's the Miami story, Sakiwazi, the river, the emergence. There's a story of us coming out of Lake Michigan, and that's the Meskwaki story of an individual made of red clay accompanied by two dogs made of white clay. Meskwaki story. And then there's a story that coincides throughout Potawatomi, Odawa, and Ojibwe being set down from the sky. And there's a term in our language of a place name in Wisconsin called Nengosek. Nengosek means the center place. This area is near Madison, Wisconsin. The center place is describing the center of everything. That is where we were set down at. And that word is still with us. You may hear in prayers, Odasama Gdathmowmenan Gdathmowmenan. And that's saying we were set down in the same way that Gdathmowmenan, or we set this tobacco down in the same way that Gdathmowmenan set us down. And that is a direct callback to that creation story of being set down through the backpack. So there's a lot in the language that connects all of these different things to figure out It's like Indiana Jones archaeological stuff. This one. So any questions on these one?
So I know that other cultures would use the Pleiades as a way to like check people's eyesight as well. Have you heard anything? Because you can only see so many of them. If your eyesight's better, you can see 7. I think most people can only see 6 of them. But
So
so
Brody figured out he needed glasses. We were up at Boat Traverse Bay and we were outside and I was talking to him about the Pleiades and blah, blah, blah. I can't remember whose glasses he put on, maybe Becky's or somebody's glasses. And he was like, oh my, God," he cried. Because he had like, I don't think he could remember seeing the stars as not blurry. Yeah.
Yeah,
but never heard anything like that. It was Becky's glasses. She confirmed it. Yeah.
Any other questions on these ones? So next, we have 3 interpretations of the same constellation. Again, first we have Chisaba and Nengos. Chisaba. Now this being goes by different names. Chisaba, Saba, Hinsaba, Wichnana, Wichnishnabe. Bigfoot. This is the Orion constellation. This is everybody's favorite to talk about. So Chisaba, I'm going to talk about him as Wichnishnabe right here. Because back before we were how we are today, the first Nishnabek that word Wichnishnabe means original Nishnabek. So the original Nishnabek that were set down before Nanabojo's time were Chisabek. It's Bigfoot beings. There was a time in which, and they have those ancient teachings, the teachings that were here before our teachings, and they still carry those. There was a time in which they became lazy, and Gdathmowmenan decided he was going to destroy the earth. The flood. This is one version of the flood story. There's multiple. There's also multiple flood times. And so Gdathmowmenan flooded the earth to kill off the laziness. But not all of these bewitched Nishnabek were killed off, and they're still here today. And they're not like us as full beings. They're half spirit, and they can travel within dimensions, things like that too, different realms. And so it's things that we don't understand as how we are, but those are ancient ways that they're able to do those things. And so they still carry those old ways today. And when we see them or hear them, they're either helping us or they're warning us. They may be warning somebody if they're into drugs, alcohol, marijuana, all these different mind-altering things. They're telling them, hey, stay away from that. Because this is what happened to us. We've started falling into those kind of ways in which go against our teachings.
And
And
it
we were,
makes you lazy.
yeah, yep, and laziness, and they were to be killed off because of that. So it's important to stick to our teachings and have that sitwadzima, that sobriety, knowing your mind. That word sitwadzima means to know yourself, know your personality.
Could you come over to my
To live in balance.
Could you come over to my apartment building and teach all those people that I hear?
When
You have something?
I was just gonna say that, the old ones, on both my father's side, my mother's side, talked about the mind changers.
Yeah.
Alcohol, now drugs.
Yep.
You know, all that. Put you out of balance.
I don't have any bad habits, I'm good at all of them. Yeah, no, I wanted to comment.
Mickey Mouse.
Say that that's your
I
uncle.
wanted to comment on the old. When I first came around in '88, Walter Cooper and Lorenzo from.
Somebody's at the front door.
No, that's it.
What's that?
That's the doorbell at my house.
Oh, right. How handy.
And he thought, he can shift from one place to another place.
Yeah.
I remember them telling me, and I was brand new. I didn't even know how to spell Indian yet. And they told me stories are old. Some of them go back to when we were breathing water. And that always stuck with me.
So you're part fish?
I don't know.
Started out in the
They
water.
shut me up.
Well, it makes sense when you go back to the stories from Miami and Meskwaki, even another one too, I can't remember which, but coming out of water. So,
All right, yeah. And then we're new to this part of the country, are we?
what is it?
Are we Lenni Lape? Are we Delaware?
We're related. So that word Lenape in our language is Nenabe. That means the being of beings, and it is said that they are our grandfathers.
Okay.
So when we were set down, it is said that they were the first ones set down. We were later. And then the last ones were Gigaboyog, the Kickapoo. That Gigabo was related to Giga, that for boy. They were the youngest. So. Always interesting how those words break down and what it's talking about.
Yes.
Next we have Pondasa. Well, say Pondasa.
Only success.
A lot of stories that involve Pondasa. That's the winter maker. And we're going to talk about him in a minute. So he is the one that brings the winter, and there's a story of Nogma, spring. They have a fight back and forth, and she defeats him every year. And everywhere she went, she was wearing a wrap around her head made of Bmejwen, which are trailing arbutus flowers. Everywhere that she has stepped is where they grow. And that's the first flower of spring. That is the Potawatomi flower, trailing arbutus.
How do you say that? Potawatomi again?
Wabgo.
Wabagon.
And actually, this is Wabgo right here. So they start off like kind of like white, purplish, pinkish. So got purple ones. Another interpretation of this constellation is another one of Nengosek and Bojo. And so what this one is talking about, if you look to his right-hand side, you see Mo'oe, which is the wolf. I'll say Mo'oe. This is depicting in the time in which everything was named. Nana Bojo is the one that went around and he named everything. So all these words that we use in Potawatomi come from him. While he was doing this, he was accompanied by a Mo'oe, the wolf. There was a time where they were just split off. The wolf did his responsibility, and now we do our responsibility. So it's watching, making sure that we're safe as well. It's also exciting. Any questions on these ones? So here we go. Showdown time. Pondasa versus Wajik. So there's an old story in which all these birds were disappearing, and they were being all these animals got together and said, "Where's all the birds at?" I would tell most story one time, but all these birds were disappearing, and these animals got together, and they noticed that these birds were being sucked through Bmejwen Kyle Malott, a hole in the sky. And so these animals got together and they had this council. They decided, what are we going to do? We need these birds. These birds do everything for us. They bring these seeds, they sing their songs, all these different things. We need them to survive. And so Wajik said, hey, I saw them being sucked through this hole in the sky. I'm going to climb up this cedar tree and jump through there and see what I can figure out. So he did that. He jumped through that Bmejwen Kyle Malott. And so he noticed that there was this angry spirit in the sky named Nengosek. And he had trapped all of these different birds in these clouds. And so Wajik, what he did is he decided he would spin his tail real fast, go like that, and that cloud would dissolve, birds would come back through the hole. So he kept doing that with each one of them. Other cloud, these those birds back down. One day I saw what was going on. It was like, I ain't having that. So he took an arrow and he shot it at him, hit that tail, what he was doing. And the force of that arrow threw him off, and he fell through that Bmejwen Kyle Malott, hit the earth, and he died. So Gdathmowmenan, to remember him, what he did, took these stones and threw them in the sky, and that is what he continues.
That is
The fisher.
the Yellowstone, like the yellow.
Yeah, yep. So each one of these yellow stars represents a constellation, how we see it. Remember, that's the Big Dipper, and it extends out in how we see it. So that's to rememberize what he did to save those birds. So, any questions, please?
Just when I heard it one time, it was, like you were saying, the birds do all these things for us, but it was what they were saying specifically was that the birds bring the spring into winter. So, that's
Any other questions?
So, I've heard that Wintermaker is also called, is it Bmejwen Kyle?
Yeah, so Ojibwe, you hear Bmejwen Kyle Malott, Ottawa, you might hear Bmejwen Kyle Malott, but we usually refer to it as.
With same person though, as
Yeah.
well, okay.
Yep. And so that Bmejwen Kyle just means to make winter.
Oh, yeah. Man.
Yep. Now we get back to this. So notice up here, there's this being entirely out of this. Copper. This being is known as Nengosek. You may also hear Pokagon. There's a few different words. Ojibwe, you hear Mishpishu. So when we go up to a river or a lake, or any large body of water, first thing we are to do, place our tobacco there. That is not our realm. We're asking permission to be there, permission to enter, pay respect to Nengosek. That is the water keeper, water spirit. Nengosek, and you'll see these paintings here all around the Great Lakes. And a lot of these constellations are actually painted in the same way on different rocks around the Great Lakes. That's how some of these things have been saved as through art. And so Nengosek is the water keeper. He's responsible for any drownings, floods, anything like that. Or to pay respect, beasts as well. Now, I talked about the thunder beings and how they're cleaning things up. Nengosek works in the same way. You see these floods and all these different things, these typhoons, tsunamis. That is because he's also trying to cleanse the earth. What we as humans have done in a matter of 100 years or so with industry that is here now is destroying everything. So these beings, these spirits are trying to get Miskinan back to how it should be. And so Nengosek is comprised entirely out of copper scales. And copper is used in our ceremony, especially for water. So that is tying back to Nengosek. There's a lot of stories about Nengosek. If you're going up to a body of water and you start seeing swirling, you can get out of there. That's a warning. You shouldn't be here. You're not being respectful. Jim also told us if you come up to a body of water and you see this large red bird about this tall, I don't know any words for this bird or anything. He said there's this large red bird, and that's a warning sign too. If you ever see a red bird out of the lake, go home. So this is all tying in stories here. You see, Nanabojo is pointing an arrow at Nambajo. Reason for that is, remember the second brother, Wabos. He was drowned by a Nambajo. Nanabojo went out for revenge and actually killed one. This is depicting that story. Now, that story elongates into another flood story, in which all these Nambajo got together because he had killed their brother, and they decided we're gonna get this guy. And so the water started getting real high. Nanabojo started climbing to the very top of this large tree on top of a mountain. The water reached all the way up to him, and that tree fell over. And there were these animals getting on top of this log to float around, and Nanabojo was on there, and it's the start of the story. Later on, muskrat went down, grabbed the dirt, all that. That's all part of that there. Now, the brother that was killed, Wabos, was the first Anishinaabe to die. He became Gbiabos. Gbiabos is the first one we meet when we pass on. We pass on, we come up to this river, and there's a log laying across this river. Standing there is Gbiabos. Now, when we pass on, we're given 4 tobacco ties. The first one goes to him. And we're told that you tell him your name and your clan. That's why it's important to have our names. Name and our clan. Pass him tobacco, and he'll let you cross if you've been a good person in your life. If not, and you don't have those things, you get thrown in that river and you come back as a fish. So, very important to us. Next one we have up here is Shiganabuk Nengos. Now, I mentioned there was a 4th brother. Shiganabuk was that 4th brother. It said that he was so big that he killed the mother upon birth. Nanabojo was mad about that. So he took his club and he went out, he got on his back and he started beating the hell out of him with that club. Every time he hit him, pieces of his scales would fall off. And that's this. Jigwanabuk. Jigwanabuk. I know what Jigwanabuk is.
No. Oh, Flint. Striker.
Flint,
Flint.
which we use in many different ways. Jigwanabuk. And so we still remember these stories. Every time that we use these different things that are tied in with these stories, we were reminded of those stories. Every time he hit him, pieces of his scales would fall off. Jigwanabuk. And this fight happened all around the earth. He was so big he could wrap around the earth. And so every time he hit him, you could find Jigwanabuk all over the world. Now, he didn't kill him. He was too strong. And Shiganabuk went underground. And he's still there today. And it's said that when he moves around, that's when earthquakes happen. So when I asked Mary Jane Thunder about, we have like a word for dinosaur or anything like that, she said no. But there were these large beings that existed before we did, and they were not killed off. That's what her mother told her in language. They were not killed off. They went underground and they still live there today. So that movie Godzilla vs. King Kong is real.
I don't know about these beds. These aren't great bedtime stories.
Also, that first Godzilla movie from like 2014 or whatever, if you watch it, as soon as it comes from black to showing a picture, it shows this picture. And this is in Lake Superior.
2014 was the first Godzilla movie? I don't think
Of
so.
the newer one. Well, the Bryan Cranston.
I remember the original.
I used to watch the ones from English.
The black and white.
You're talking about the artwork on the wall here, the red in the red
Yes.
paint.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I remember watching it in theaters. I was like, whoa.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. So these stories.
My sons and I, we're out in the sticks here, Kachestanik, and we're by Cloud Lake, and we were heading out to we were doing a camp for a month, and we seen the Nambajo, and we got out and offered our sama to the little creek there before you get to the campground. And we asked our uncles, Arlen and DJ, what was going, what did that mean and stuff. And he said, you guys aren't out here offering your sama when you're swimming or you're fishing or just any time. And them spirits might be hungry too. You can get offered them a little medium too from time to time. But make sure you always offer that sama. So whenever we go out that way, even if we're just taking a ride out there, there's a Newman Creek. We put our sama in there before we even use the lake or do anything.
Yep, so it's important for us.
Mm-hmm.
You'll also see on old bags and stuff, you'll see Nambajo depicted on one side, and then the other side, you'll see Jigwe. That's creating balance because these two entities are always in conflict with each other as well. You'll see when storms come across Lake Michigan, you see the water get real rough, and then you see that lightning. That's them fighting. So they're always in conflict with each other too. So next we have Bekwaga. This guy right here, Bekwaga. You may also hear Aguaco. We're going to focus on the word Bekwaga because it tells us something. And this picture up here is the plat right here. It's depicting a story. And so the story goes, a long time ago, the Anishinaabe, they were always watching the sky and everything, and they noticed there was these 4 meteorites that were going around the sky. And there was this one that was like real mischievous, and you get close to the earth, try to get as close to the earth as you could. And then one time they saw it, and it hit the earth. And so the Anishinaabe went over there to see what was going on. And so they noticed that there's this big crater there, and they would come there and they would watch all the time what was happening in that area. And that crater over time started to fill up with water. And then over time, plants and trees started growing out of there. And one day, they were there, and this strange creature that they'd never seen before came out of that water. And that creature was real vicious, nothing like they'd ever seen before. And they called him Bekwaga, and that is the Wolverine. And then, Ojibwe, they have a word that says one that comes from a shooting star. Our version is Bekwaga, came from somewhere else, like Alf.
So, Wolverine and Badger, are they considered? I mean, they're like the same family, and they're both very strong and mighty vicious. So is that same word applied for?
So the word for badger is a little different, and it's describing how they eat roots. Saguk. I've never heard that used for a badger, Bekwaga.
Okay,
but they
no, I
are-
just wondered, they're so close. I mean,
Yeah.
well, you figure U of M and University of Wisconsin use badgers and wolverines as their, they gotta be mighty.
Yeah.
They are mighty.
So yeah, a lot of these animal words, they have different stories behind them as well, but this is one that coincides with the stars in life, so I like to put that up there too. And you see that the Northern Lights, that Wasnode right there. Last year when it was going all crazy, it was 2 years ago now, this is what I saw above our house. This eagle formed like that, just right above our house, looked just like that. Yeah. Yeah, this is the cat right here. But then I also wanted to put, when I was beating that, I put the moon in there and then that rainbow around it. And that's another story that's separate too. And that describes when the moon was created. Gdathmowmenan said it was so beautiful, he cried, and that those tears filled up Buckgeesis, the moon. There was a crack in Buckgeesis, and that water started to spew out in an arc. And in that arc was all these different colors. That's the Pokagon, the rainbow. So that's what that's depicting. So, and then as you see, Long Nengos, Jeep Nengos, different constellations in there too. So there's different ways in which these stories stay alive is through artwork. Back of this vest is different constellations that you've seen up here too. So I like to incorporate that stuff in it. So that here. Now here's the full map here with all of the words and different variations along the on the right side. So ones that we didn't talk about are Gbacon. And you see this light blue path along here. Gbacon is the Milky Way. It means the path of souls. Now, when we pass on, that is the path in which we travel to your world. We have Gizis for the sun. We have Debuk Gizis for the moon, which just means a nighttime sun. Gokmiskinan is our grandmother Earth. That's literally what that means. We have words for some different planets, specific stars that we see. So Venus, at certain times of the year, we call Wabnengos, which means the eastern star. There's other times of the year in which we call it Gishmonengos, which is the western star. So it's describing the movement too. Mars we call Skojik, which means the red hanger, one that hangs red in the sky. Skojik. Jupiter, Zhaononengos. Zhaononengos means the southern star. So we live in the southern part of the sky, Zhaonon. And then here's an interesting one, Qingwen. Qingwen is a meteor. It describes the thing that with the loud rumbling. Qingwen. Now in Odawa up north, there's the Qingmen family. That's where that name comes from, Qingwen.
And it means what again?
Meteor.
From
There was, I think around here, somebody,
Yeah,
they
so
used to call them Qingwen.
well,
Yeah.
also with our migration story and how we came back to this area. So there's tons of stories out there. There's stories of us originating on the East Coast, but there's stories that predate us doing that. So when I mentioned being set down in Wisconsin, there was a time in which we migrated out there because we can't get into that story today. And so when we came back, there was these different stopping points along that migration. And there were things that told us where to stop. In Plymouth, Michigan, there is an old meteor crater site in a cemetery. What I've been told. In the middle of this old cemetery, there's this meteor impact spot. Around that are old Anishinaabe burials. And then around those are more present day settler burials that they just started burying around the other burials. And this is a cemetery. What I've been told, we have a key to the cemeteries. It is, but it's,
There were a lot of Potawatomi in that area, Plymouth. I grew up in Detroit area, and Plymouth is got a lot of history, our history over there. And I don't remember hearing the crater story.
so there, in our migration back, that was our third stopping point. And the way that we knew was because of that impact site. And it's interesting that later on, you have little Detroit Potawatomis go back to that area and all these other different things that they are connected with. Any questions on any of these things?
We have a word for sad.
I haven't heard of them. There probably is. I just don't know.
Are them clan markings on the outside?
So on the outside, those are actually depicting the moons. So each one of these faint lines shows when each moon stops. And it's not based off of the Forest County moon names, but the ones that were more in this area.
Sure.
But you can shoot me a message, I can explain it. That's super.
And then the colors, there's a few stories as far as the white, the yellow, the red, and black. Maybe you can elaborate.
Yeah, so the way that I did it here is the yellow is referring to springtime, the red is referring to summertime, the black is referring to fall time, and the white is winter time. There's different stories that correlate with those colors. But that's how I just wanted to put it like that, so I could kind of pick it up.
Mhm. Then there's some people say, like, as far as the medicine wheel colors, the four races of man. I've heard from elders here it's like a life cycle. So
Yeah.
you're I don't know where you would begin, but I think probably white would be associated with like pure, like the snow, so your youth, and then yellow, a little bit older, then adulthood, red, and then black would be elder. Have you ever heard of that?
I've heard it that way. I've also heard the yellows represented the youth or those babies. The red is more of like that teenage. The black is more of adults, and then the white is elders for the white hair. Heard that one
Okay.
too.
Yeah, I heard that one too. Yeah. Miigwech.
There was a passing of information from oh, what's his name? The elder that just knew so much. Oh, Lord. His daughters are still alive. They're Gun Lake girls. But he was registered here with, and he taught a lot of our people.
So Frank.
Frank Bush, thank you. I'm sorry, Frank. That he was given the teaching that the east would be the yellow, to the south would be the black, to the west would be the red, and to the north would be the white. And that's because this particular area that we live in, the Great Lakes area, and that Michigan is such a fertile soil for plants and fruits and vegetables. That it comes from that black, rich earth. And that black, rich earth comes from the rains.
All right. Any other questions here? All right, Miigwech Ezhe. If you if you go to Wheel again, I'll just plug that. This PowerPoint is actually on here. And there's a link to the presentation I did for the language conference, and then this one will be recorded and then we'll post it up there too. So, anyways, good.
Do you give out that map? That
I don't have it within the
previous slide, was it?
This one?
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, I don't.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
Will you have it for the elders next?
Yeah, I will. Yep.
Thank you.
I like a copy of it too.
All right. Yeah. Yep. That's also on Wheel again. I printed off.
Thank you.
Just shoot me a message, email.
There was a shock seeing that on wrist talks. I'm like, yeah. Before.
If anyone's interested, we do have a poster printer here. So if anybody wants a poster size of it, Jen also said we have to use up that ink because the ink goes bad. We don't print it
Then
up.
use it up.
$2 a copy.
That goes straight to Jen. She gets paid extra for using up the ink.
Then we could tell everybody, hey, we know
Yeah,
the guy
using her
that
big money.
that was on Red Dog. That sure was a shock.
I actually didn't notice that right away. Nikki's the one that called me later after the show. She goes, didn't you see that star, map? And I'm like, oh, yeah.
well, that was Kyle's. What was so cool was that it was Graham Greene.
Yeah.
You know, it was the last time we all got to see him, and he was part of, he was Canadian, wasn't he? Pretty close to us.
He was actually one of my cousins.
Yeah, well,
On the Oneida side. My grandma came from Six Nations.
it probably looked really familiar to him, you know, and it was just
No.
one of those things that made you go, huh?
Yeah. I printed off a screenshot of it and put it on my office wall.
That's cool. It's like we have a friend that was named, and I don't know who named him a long time ago. I'm not gonna say his name, but his name in English, he's still with us, is Nengosek guy. So it was a little bit opposite, because that's just been his name. I don't know. He was named that a long time ago. But as the whole, as you're talking about, you know, first man being set down, you know, those
He's
shows.
got a number of names.
Yeah. That one, though. You got pretty close to it, you know, tonight. Yeah, so thank you. Appreciate that.
He introduces himself as Dalai Lamas,
Yeah. He is lucky.
Lackey.
Yeah.
Lackey.
And now everybody's attention
Better.
is on the llamas, you know, that they're doing their peace march. And so, yeah. And their doggy had surgery yesterday. Anyway, thank you very much for this. Appreciate it.
Did anybody online have any questions before we wrap this up? I think we can wrap it up.
Someone.
What's the meaning of life?
That's just Becca. Carry on.
Well, thank you guys for coming in online as well, and thank you everyone for coming in person. In person, we'll probably be cleaning up for a minute, so if you have more questions, feel free to bug Kyle with that. That being said, thank you guys for coming out.
Amina.
I found the, it's under 2.11. Uncle, what's happening in the sky? And that's in English. But I could only find 16 of the questions out of that story. So you heard that, didn't you? Kyle, you had heard the story, hadn't you? It's not real ornate like it's not about the stars and that, but John Winchester taught that to us. And he would go over it this time in the spring.
Oh.
Yeah, so there is that story. And